Testing. Okay. All right, we're live. Happy Halloween. Happy Samhain. Happy day. The energies for me today have been dense. Like, oh, Magali. But I don't know if other people are feeling that or not. I had thought that today would be a much more different vibe. But yeah, starting last night, something happened, and I'm not sure what it all what it all means yet. Anyways, it brought up in me this concept of talking about the process of ascension and just identifying the easy way and the hard way, because this was a big thing for me when I was able to notice that approaching ascension in a particular way is so easy, right? One way is very easy and the other way is very hard, right? And it really is sort of one way or the other. We sort of like, we're either going the easy way kind of purely, or we're going a pretty hard way, and we go sort of varying degrees of hard with ourselves. And so I wanted to distinguish them, and then I had some examples of, and these examples might be a little triggering. I hope they're not, but they might be, because most of us have gone the hard way. And so part of this is like, we're going to probably be like, I've kind of felt this way. Maybe not exactly the way I describe it, but I've felt this way. And he's kind of saying right now, I shouldn't have done things that way. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that we want to see what the hard path looks like. And what the easy path looks like. And it's, we actually hold ourselves to the hard way, just because of our conditioning, basically. Our sort of fast food, give it all to me now society has sort of conditioned us to think that we can very quickly just do something that's so vast, like ascension. To make us feel like, oh, if I just do this practice, then I'll finally be good enough. This type of thing. This is a big pitfall that we get into. It's very common anyway. Not everyone gets stuck in this, but yeah. So the easy thing is to first notice ascension. It seems to be like a process, but in reality, it's only a remembering of what is true. So the ascension itself is more or less an illusion of story for us to engage in as we remember what's true. And it happens in varied ways in different places. And here, there's this narrative of separation from divinity. And so the basically, the easy path can be summarized as love and acceptance. It's understanding that I'm already home, and my creator's already with me. Therefore, I accept what's here with me. You know, another way of thinking about it is surrender. But I prefer the term of acceptance, because surrender sort of sounds like I'm giving power away to things. And also triggers the ego to think of losing stuff. But really, we're just accepting that this is reality now. Whatever's happening, that's what it is, right? And that I must be in accordance with it in my vibration, because it's here, right? It's here. Therefore, I created it. We want to say we create our reality and we manifest our reality, but then we're like, not that though, and not that though, right? But that's not how it works, right? It's just that we're consciously manifesting a lot, or very little, really, and then unconsciously manifesting most of the rest. So we've already created it, and if we don't like it, there's a lesson, right? So it's sort of this very idea that we have to work to unite with ourself and our creator. Like, if we just think about that for a second, like, how could we be separate from ourself and our creator. It's one and the same thing. And we're not able to be separate from that. It's not possible. We're as close to that as we are to the body or something. We could think of it that way. We couldn't possibly be separate from it. It's the spark that drives everything we are. It's not possible, right? So any type of hard path manifestation is going to be somehow disregarding that truth. It's going to be somehow like chastising, guilting ourselves, shaming ourselves, right? Instead of, or others, which is the same thing. When we're shaming others, we're just ashamed of what they're doing because we're seeing it as us doing it. Like we're having resonance as if we're doing the thing they're seeing in a way, because we're seeing the mirror, right? So we're seeing ourselves doing something we hate, and we are saying that's not appropriate, right? If it's not appropriate, then we shouldn't have done it. We did it with them. Like, we're taking responsibility, really. This is like a spiritual responsibility as a creator being, that I'm observing what I am creating. So the fact that I'm here, of seeing it, I'm a part of it, and it's all of us together. It's that type of mentality. And from that place, then we're not going to find that we get into conflicts with people, really, because if they want to do something that we don't like, we might try to offer some wisdoms and things, but we're not going to try and convince them. We're not going to resist what they want. We're not going to push at them to change them. We might just say, well, here's how I see it. And perhaps it will convince them, like, maybe we don't desire them to do whatever it is they're trying to do. But the part of us that wants to convince them is resisting, like, what's going on. So it's just a little bit of a different approach. It's kind of nuanced, and it takes time to balance and learn and integrate. And so I'm just going to finish with some of these examples, and then I'm going to jump into the chat. So as always, feel free, throw some questions in, whatever's going on, say hello, all those things. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you on this glorious Samhain Halloween. I'm excited to go out tonight. It'll be fun. So some examples just of like practical things that might happen in your life, and how we might look at it from the easy approach, right? So let's say my car breaks down. So I thought I was supposed to be at work on time, but apparently that's not the case. God's with me. Everything's fine. I'm going to go about my business while I'm looking for opportunities to learn what this could mean about me. The situation is something I've created to see about myself. I'm going to look at how people react to me about me being late. I'm going to look at how I handle being late, how I choose to approach people. I'm going to see how I return after maybe they chide me, maybe they give me shit for being late. I'm going to see how I return to them with that, how I handle that. I take on this lesson, even in the moment knowing my car's broken down. We take a second to just take on what's happening and go, okay, that's what we're doing. It's not a resistance. It's like, oh, this is interesting. This is not what I anticipated, not what I wanted at all. Not at all what I wanted. But okay, let's go, God. What are we doing? Right? It's almost like a buddy relationship with God in that way. God can be separate, creator, whatever word we want to use, source, divinity, life, whatever. But it's that you can see just that attitude to the problem. It's not an easy necessarily. It's not easy to be on the easy path, because we cling to these ideas like, oh, I have to be on time. I'm going to get in trouble. Everyone's going to get mad at me. It's going to be chaotic and all this other stuff. But we'll actually find that when we are late and we're just like, we're very peaceful about it and we're not all angsty and weird, people tend to respond just like, yeah, okay. They feel your vibe. They vibe with it, generally. I don't run into these issues really anymore. But I also don't go to work like that anymore. So I guess that's to be expected. But when we come into these situations without all the anxious shame and all that other stuff, this is why it's the easy way, is like we have taken the opportunity before we've even encountered these people to just be in acceptance of what's going on and that it's fine and I'm okay. So then we engage them. We engage them from a place of presence and centeredness instead of just panic, like, oh, they're going to be mad at me. Oh, like, so even if they are mad at you, so what? I mean, whatever. Right. And then they fire you and then, so what? Right. Then we look for another opportunity and we thank the universe for getting us out of a place that would fire us over something ridiculous like this. Right? Like, that's kind of a good thing. That means the boss was probably not the nicest individual, right? Not very understanding or compassionate to fire someone for their car breaking down. So, maybe we probably got ourselves out of a good situation, right? And this is all just, hypothetical, but it's trying to show like the orientation. And if that's kind of the goal, to have that orientation makes the whole thing easy. It's just a little challenging sometimes to take that orientation. So another one is like my spouse has left me, right? Let's say. I thought we were going to spend our lives together. So it's painful. It hurts. It's really challenging. I'm grieving. But I know that I created it for myself. I know I couldn't ever truly be alone. I'm grateful for all the time that I spent with the person. And I forgive them for exercising their sovereign and free will to leave. Like, of course they can leave if they want. Of course. I mean, right? What is meant to be is what's going to be, I'll navigate my memories and look at the relationship to see what lessons are there if I feel there are. Like when I feel stable emotionally and more accepting of what is going on, and then try to, what am I healing from this? What am I learning from this? What am I balancing in myself from this? But none of it as, what does this say about negatively about me? It doesn't have to be like that. Although, if they left because we were being problematic and they're telling us all of this, of course we should listen to that, hear that out. Always, right? But these are just meant to show, like, we're not fighting against what's happening. If we fight against things, whether we actually say or not, we end up holding this agitated vibration, this distorted vibration. And then we create more confusion around us and distortions in other people as we bring it to them. So you can imagine, I'm sure you've dealt with people that, like, they just got a weird vibe going on. They seem irritated about the whole world or something. Like they bug people, right? And it's kind of like that. And we're trying to be more conscientious of that, of like, we're trying to be more aware of, oh, if I'm like bringing all of this irritation, even if I'm not saying anything, I'm still bringing all this irritation energy because life's not going the way I particularly want it. We can realize that that's actually how we improve everything. We stop being so irritated and angry about everything, and then we can be on the easy path, basically. But it requires a lot of like self-acceptance and self-responsibility and honesty, and it's challenging. So the hard path is where the individual hasn't really like heard the call to awaken, so they're like in a kind of an unconscious type state, or they're engaging in they might be on the spiritual path, so to speak, but essentially they don't believe they're good enough for God or good enough to experience God or divine love. And they essentially, because of that, there's a lack of love for themselves, and this affects their ability to recognize that it's okay, because they're not going to feel like whole, and usually they'll try to find the wholeness outside. And what inevitably happens is this back and forth between the external and the internal world, where the individual is continually going to be triggered and upset by everything, especially if they've started to wake up. Everything is going to bug them pretty much, because the world is nuts. It's nuts. And that's why it's so important to settle the mind down with its judgment, because otherwise, when we're seeing all the insanity in the world, we're just going to lose our shit about it internally. It's going to be like, this is why people start to seclude and all this other stuff as well, is because they're not able to walk the easy path in the world properly yet. So they, instead of doing that, they just conserve energy, have conservative attachments, and try to pull away. And a lot of us, I think, are wanting to like come back out more. And to do that, though, we have to have like a more clear comprehension of, we are the one experiencing ourselves. So we can't really blame anything else, right? Once we're blaming anything else, we're in a notion of duality, which is okay, but we have to notice these things. It's totally fine. But when we're in a notion of duality, the path is going to be harder. But when we're like, what is this saying about me? What is this about me? Why would I bring this about with me? We're not blaming ourselves. Very important not to say like, we did this, it's my fault. It isn't a cause and effect fault like that, but the reality is, right? And so we're just accepting this is what it is, and I've created this. We have to take on that responsibility. But the hard path, the individual doesn't feel good enough to be the creator, to be with the creator, to experience divine love, unconditional love, to feel deserving of love, to feel deserving of the creator's love, others' love, these things. So the car breaks down, and so we'll go through the same ones. Like I've heard a lot of people say this, so it just came to mind, but I bet this is because I slept with this person the other day, and their energy must be lingering in my field. I'm upset with myself. I resent myself for bringing this situation about. I'm going to be late. People will be upset with me, and it's not my fault. And then probably struggling, right? And frustrated all about it. Really stretching to try to blame another person for it that we slept with or something a couple days ago energetically. Oh, it must be, I knew something was off. Oh, that must be it. And it's okay if we've done that. I'm just saying, we get all frustrated and try to blame something. Oh, it's probably the mechanic, that he's an idiot and everyone warned me about him. Then I used him anyway because he was cheaper. And, we try to make it about something like that. When it's almost never about those things, really. It just kind of seems to be. The ego really wants it to be about that stuff. Because that stuff's really understandable by the rational mind. But you notice that it's all about them and they, and life did this to me, right? So we're going to feel like a victim. And it's the same situation, right? But it's sort of the opposite polarity of it. And so the next one is like, my spouse left me. They promised they'd stay with me forever. They never keep their promises. If they were more awake and more aware like I am, they'd be able to handle me. I was patient with them and they threw me away. They're selfish. I guess I want the best for them. I guess I send them love, right? Like that type of thing. Like there's some spirituality in there. So I'm like, well, I blame them for all of it, but also I guess I send them love too. And these are hard ones because, especially with spouses and things, because there's so much interplay and dynamics between it and so much built up stuff. It's usually a lot of stuff to look at. And so the hard path is almost always taken when we are leaving relationships, because it's so affronting to our ego to be, especially if someone's leaving us, if they're leaving us, then it's like, well, no, you're stupid, right? Like that's what the ego's like. It's like like the way a 5-year-old might argue. It's kind of like that, like the way a 5 or 6-year-old might react to being called names on a playground or it's kind of operating like that a little bit. And it gets irritated, and then it just has to just cast it out. And that makes it the hard path, because now we're not just like accepting and flowing with life, like almost regardless of why they left, thank the universe, really, because it must be the right thing. It must be. It's challenging. It's really challenging, It's really challenging when people leave us. And and that's why the hard path is usually the path gone, because the easy path requires us to accept things we don't want to accept. So even the easy path is hard. And I'm sure some of you were thinking, like, I can't see how it would be easy. Even the easy path is hard. It's just, it's easy because we're not going to suffer the way. It's still work. It's still, it still seems to be work, I should say. It still seems to be work for a time. And, some stuff is meant to seem quite difficult and challenging. And then usually after it gets integrated, it's almost like we forget how hard anything was, as well, as we kind of walk up the stairs. I often see it as a staircase that spirals, and we just keep going up these stairs, and we're actually cycling around the same experience over and over. These experiences are called the 7 initiations. I was thinking about doing like almost a course on these initiations through the rays, and the four human initiations, and then the spiritual initiations, and how they cycle. If you guys are interested. And when I say course, I'm just going to be doing it on YouTube for free. So I don't mean like a paid thing or anything. But let me know if you'd be interested in that. It's these initiations, and if we understand these initiations and then we try to choose the easy path, that's what helps us sort of really get moving, honestly. And it's a contradiction and a paradox that I'm speaking about, because we're talking about something that's already done. Right? You're already whole right now, perfect now, the image of God now. So it's a weird, mysterious thing, even, that this journey is even, what is it all for? Right? That's one of the biggest mysteries, to my mind, is, the apparent journey, and when it ends, it's like, so, okay, cool. But anyway, it's like, it must be the experience itself, right? It must be the learning itself, or the joy, or it must be the moment itself. That the purpose is the moment itself, right? I would say. At least that's where I rest currently on that particular question. But yeah, let me jump into the chat now. Thank you guys for listening and hanging out. I appreciate you, as always. Hello, Garganzool. There's an easy way. Hi, Theodora. Yeah, that's good that you said that. Not exactly. I clickbaited a bit, maybe. Not really. It truly is the easy way, because it's easier than the hard way. Because the hard way, you're still doing the same stuff, just really slowly and kind of poorly, basically. When we do a lesson poorly, which means we receive a lesson and then we blame the teacher, universe, basically. We blame the teacher for the lesson we didn't want to do. It's like we're sitting in a class, they hand us the test, or they hand us a pop quiz, and we're just like, fuck your quiz, throw it off the table, right? We don't, right? So if we do that, then we're not getting it, right? So the easy way is like, it's a lesson. Thank you, teacher, right? And part of that is recognizing the parts of us that like don't want to accept the lesson at all, right? Like it's okay to feel like this lesson is stupid. It's okay, right? If we just allow that stuff to come up, and then we remind ourselves that if it was a stupid lesson, I wouldn't have set it up for me, because I'm not a stupid soul. So I know my soul, at least, someone somewhere in here knows what's going on. I know that much. Right? Taking like humility at the human level. At the human level, we're very much like almost like a dog. That the higher self being like the human walking the dog, or the soul perhaps being the human walking the dog, the spirit. And so sometimes we poop in bad spots and we bark at strangers and stuff, right? And so the spirit and soul is sort of trying to get us to harmonize together. And to do that, we have to we have to accept the lessons as lessons, and I'm here. I'm on board with all the lessons, even though some of them are stupid. Your 3 latest sermons? Yeah, sure. That'd be cool. Hi, Curly Vegan. What about the shadow? What do you think about it? So what comes to mind is awareness is like a pillar of light, right? Consciousness, that the body you are. When the body's centered awareness is looking outwards, it's going to see the shadow cast by consciousness when it's outward focused, external focused. So the shadow doesn't exist in the center, right? So the shadow doesn't exist. That's what I think about it. I think that fear and the shadow is not real. That's part of the illusion of projection of awareness outside into something, which causes sort of like the light here pushes out something, which then it's distorted. Based on the distortions we have in our lower 3 energy centers. Those distortions are essentially just our beliefs in lack. So eventually, the shadow then is an illusion we distort from our mind's eye or mind perception into the reality, internally or externally, whatever. And it's something that we've manufactured out of an illusion of distortion from the energy centers. And because it's an illusion and a distortion, it could just be seen as a confusion. In other words, if you had a panel and you could see a beautiful picture, but there's these blotches of shadow all over that like make it weird. Like the shadow is there, but it's just sort of a cloud, and you just move it away, and then you see the picture. The shadow doesn't affect anything, doesn't do anything, serves no purpose other than to inspire you to be within the narrative that you've selected also as a soul, until eventually that narrative doesn't become as useful, and then you see the narrative for what it was, the karma, in other words, and you step off the karmic wheel. And that's when shadow doesn't mean anything anymore at that point, that level of perspective. The shadow itself couldn't be. In other words, darkness is not, it's the lack of light, right? And where there is not light, there is not anything. Light is all that is. So darkness itself is perceived lack of light, but really, to even observe anything, there must be light in it as well. So either the shadow is a very constricted and tight bit of light that is dark, or it doesn't exist at all. It's just the darkness, the nothingness of nothing. That's how I see shadow. So when it comes to the easy way or the hard way, it's the shadow that, if we look at the car breaking down example, the person has been in trouble for being late. They want to blame someone else. They feel like stuff's their fault all the time. It's obviously their shadow. that's pushing them onto the hard path, right? So it's good that you brought this up. A really good way to think about it is that the shadow will maneuver us into the hard path, and because it will seek to navigate comfortably, like presuming, anxious a little bit about the past traumas that we've had, where we've had situations, people have hurt our feelings, yelled at us, done whatever when we were late. Like maybe our parents just really hated us being late and taught us to try to always be on time or something. It could be something really deep. It could be something more simple. But it's that shadow of illusion of past stuff that is truly not relevant right now. It's truly not relevant. These people will not necessarily respond the same as all these other people. The moment that happened in the past does not have to happen again. The mind's just presuming. And the mind presumes using shadow, but also using more true and aligned truth experiences of the identity. So that's how we decide like what we do, right? But when we're accessing shadow, usually we're hurt or anticipating to be hurt, feeling threatened or somehow not in sovereignty, basically. That's what I would say. That was kind of a long diatribe on it, but I hope that helps. Cranky Pants McGee. Hello. Thank you for joining us. Garganzul, I think of as monkeys picking up fleas from each other's backs. Yeah. We are very much animals, very much animalistic still. Most of us, almost all of us, very much. I see us very similarly. It's very, I try to hold it's all very adorable purview. Some of that's hard. It's hard to look at some of the stuff that we do with each other though and think it's adorable. But I remember like the animal kingdom, just like the animal kingdom, you know, lions aren't like super chill with gazelles, right? Like they do stuff that is kind of disturbing. And we're looking to transcend that, right? But we're still very much in it as a society in general. Yeah. Theodora says, sure, now that I'm awake, I believe I handle things totally different than how I would have in the past. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's a continual evolving thing as well, I've found. It like just keeps getting to these different, more nuanced and weird levels. And I think it's an infinite thing. Like we can do that we kind of do that forever, I feel. Violet's World says, looking back, I see how it all had to happen the way it did, and that allows me to have faith in the fact that no matter what, everything that's occurring around me is for me in some way. I accept it. Exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to do that, is to notice all this. There are certainly probably things that you lost in the past or that seemed to suck, but ended up being like blessings, either through the learning you got or like some type of thing happened a couple weeks later that wouldn't have happened if the first thing didn't happen. It's sort of like these weird things happen like that. Like there was something that happened with my bank where they like shut my bank account down. And I was like, well, it's not good, right? I kind of need that. And then when I called them, they like, the guy, it just took forever. And then he couldn't get through to me. Eventually, I got to like this third person. And they said, yeah, I'll help you. Maybe I'm just gonna email the back office. And I'm like, well, I get a notification. They're like, no, just if it doesn't work in 3 or 5 business days, call us back. And I was like, what the F? And it turned out that the next time I called, nothing happened. I called them back. But then the lady that got me like fixed everything immediately, did this whole thing. But obviously I was frustrated the first time, right? And it was this whole weird experience of getting frustrated with this like situation. Just like seems like they're not even trying to get me on my account. They're not even trying to help me, basically. That's how it seemed. And then the next time, it was like the whole thing had shifted. In fact, I had to go through this literally like weird experience of like, well, I guess I don't have a bank account anymore. Like, I don't even have a bank account now. weird. I had to go through this whole thing with it. It was weird for me to even have that type of experience. I didn't anticipate it. But it's like suddenly I'm not allowed to have a bank account for some reason. This is a very strange experience, but so I ended up letting go, like, seeing all this crap in me about bank accounts and whatever it was, and like let all that go, and I felt free as a bird, and then I'm like, I guess I'll call them. I don't know, whatever. I think my dad was like, you should call them again. And I was like, fine, and I called them, and they just immediately fixed it, immediately. And that's another thing that the universe often does. It makes suggestions to us through people like this to experience these types of interesting, weird scenarios. And we only really pick up on all those little details of it if we're like present with ourselves, feeling it, not too wrapped up in each thing that's irritating us. The more irritated we are, the harder it is to like see the bigger thing happening too. Southwest Rose says, or we blame our attitude on the incoming energies from the sun or planets or wherever. Yeah, that's a big one too. Oh, I'm sorry that I was an absolute butthole yesterday. Mercury was retrograde, so like, or whatever, right? And certainly there is some truth to these energies affecting us, but like it's humans are interesting. We like to excuse our behavior as if we didn't consciously directly choose to do whatever we did. We like to be like, well, I only did it because of this. The reason for what we did isn't super, necessarily real as well. So we end up, it's a very odd, thought process, but consciousness acts at the frequency that it's vibrating at. So what one will do when they're vibrating is essentially mathematically simple to predict. This is why a being that has a higher view in the densities of consciousness is able to see basically what you're just about to do, because it's obvious what you're going to do based at the frequency you're at, more or less. It's not obvious the precise specifics, it's obvious the direction you're going to go, if that makes sense. So it's not obvious necessarily the exact thing, although if it's a manifested physical thing, the astral forms before you go and exercise it as well. It's a little ahead in that way. Because it gets brought in from the mind down. And I'm not sure why I'm talking about that. Oh, I think because we blame people, but we are all doing all of that all the time around each other, creating and miscreating all these weird things. And then we want to like excuse it, like we did what we did because that's how we felt in the moment. Like, I don't know. We thought that's what we were supposed to do. So we did it. Either they forgive me or they don't. But also it's really important to apologize if we have been a jerk, right? And I think that's why we do that thing with the planets or the whatever. It's sort of like we don't really want to take full responsibility for our actions. So we're going to be like, I'm not like a bad person. Just the moon was an eclipse or whatever. And, I go nuts on eclipses still. So I get it. I shouldn't say I go nuts, but I just wrestle with a lot of weird visions and things on eclipses. Theodora says, I wasn't aware I was even on a path, much less know there was an easy or hard path. These are things I didn't know until way after awakening, after acceptance. Took a really long time to get there. Yeah. I think a lot of us were sort of did that. Like we were on a path, but weren't aware of it. Happy I love your day. 1:43 p.m. Blessings to Mr. Rogers. Yeah, I think many of us were doing that. Like we were on a path that we didn't even really know we were on. Yeah. It becomes also more apparent as we go further that the path, like it's been going on, right? It's more like, at least the way that I see it is like, that's always what's been going on, if that makes sense. So it's just at differing layers of it. And yeah, it's good though when we finally kind of get it and realize what we're doing. It's a great weight off of our back, I think, for me anyways, because we're not like trying to fix ourselves. We're trying to correct our belief that we need to be fixed. That's all we're trying to do, really. No, we don't need to be fixed. We're good. And we're trying to correct the beliefs that say otherwise. That's really all we're doing. There's a lot of peace in just understanding that's really all the ascension is. Discarding what is false about the self. And, we're going through a time where people are getting just very heavily into the doing things or trying to act spiritual, if that makes sense. They're trying to behave a certain way. I think they see people behaving certain ways and then they do that too. And, that type of thing. Because we believe that to be spiritual, we are supposed to look and sound very relaxed. Come with me on this meditative journey. I'll do a ASMR. I'll do an ASMR stream one day and whisper at people. That's fun. Theodore says, everything's so much easier having my faith, total torture not to have any faith. Yeah, without faith, it's like a nightmare, really. Yeah, it is really, because there's no sense of understanding that this means something and it's going to go somewhere and it's going to facilitate my growth, that this is my expansion and emergence of my divine self. That's what this is. So, yeah. Without faith that is what's happening and that's what it's all for, we're pretty lost, probably. That's one of the reasons I always I try to always bring God into it, like bring the creator back into it. There's so many teachers right now that like don't do that. And I get it. I understand. I get it. Why they would be hesitant. But to deny that infinite creator, it essentially really stymies our growth spiritually. And I'm hoping that I see more of a world where people will have different faiths, like different religions, but really I just see them as faiths, like different belief structures that all harmonize with each other, as far as like they stop worrying about who believes what and they just do their thing. That's, I think, where we're headed. People just doing their thing and not condemning each other. I think that's the next shift of stuff. I've seen some really good things coming from different places in that regard. I see it going that way. But it just takes people to realize that they don't have to like bully each other into believing certain things. It's just it's pointless, basically, right? So we can just like not do it. Like, what's the point? I can't fathom it, but the hard way was terrible, the worst. Never going back. It's like opening my closet and finding Narnia and you want me to go back? Yeah, no, I'm not getting out of Narnia. I'm gonna chill with Aslan. Johanna Borgen, hello, happy Halloween. Joni White says we create patterns till we get the lesson. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Um, absolutely. Um, it was my birthday Aaron L says it was my birthday last Tuesday, and so I had a couple of drinks Monday and Tuesday with friends, and it really affected my well-being for the whole week. It taught me that I really don't want alcohol. It's poison. It's not worth it. I agree completely. Alcohol is poison, basically. I pretty much entirely agree. And I had a similar experience. Whenever I drink, I feel disgusting. I also feel like guilty about it as well, even while I'm drinking. Uh, so yeah, I feel sort of the same. That it's just not for me. Um, I went out for some whiskeys with one of the neighbors a month or two ago, and yeah, I felt blah. Like he was moving and going to Toronto somewhere. He's a Mexican philosophy student. He was a pretty chill guy, so I wanted to send him off well. And yeah, I woke up in the morning. I was like, oh, never again. But I think that's what alcohol does, right? And that's obviously my own. I think I only had a few drinks, but still. Curly Vegan. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for joining. He says, maybe we unconsciously create challenges for ourselves to provide reasons to feel worthy enough. Same notion as the old Jim saying, no pain, no gain. That's exactly right, actually. Yeah, that's exactly right. But I would say it's not even unconscious that we do that. It's that's like part of our learning. That's part of our soul lesson plan that gets made, like when we're incarnating. Sort of wants us to learn about our worth and our value. It wants us to remember our value. And one of the mechanisms for that is to sort of make us stand up for our value in some way a little bit. And it wants us to learn how to do that in a balanced way, in a way that's centered, not in a way that's like attacking people, but in a way that's centered and balanced. That's a big part of it, is getting confronted with value or valueless feelings, worthlessness, and standing in our worth in the face of perceived worthlessness as well. Or someone acting as if we are worthless, which of course we're not worthless. So if they're acting as if we're worthless, then we need to find our worth before we have to stop believing them, of course, right? So to orient us that way, yeah, we cultivate these little lessons. They're unconscious to the human, of course. I think that's what you meant when you said unconscious. It's unconscious to the human perspective. But also it starts to become a little more obvious as well, what we're doing. We start to see more of the depths of our being. We start to see more of why we're experiencing what we're experiencing more quickly, or we even start to notice what we might experience next. We can start to feel it. I think this is going to be about my worth or something, right? Start to feel it. And like something about today is indicating to me that my self-love is going to come into question here today or something. Yeah. Thank you, Joni. I appreciate it. Mercury retrograde is super rough. Yeah, it is. It is. Aaron L said, I questioned last night what it's going to teach me, and I feel like it's made me really value myself so much more. No compromising mentally, physically, socially, financially. More emphasis on my needs. Yeah, exactly. Taking care of yourself. And just leaning on your. I think one of the tricks to mastery is that we want to learn at our pace how to be masterful in all areas of things. And so what I was talking about earlier with the initiations, like we see these initiations or life lessons in like all areas of our lives, finances and everything, mental health, physical health, social stuff, all that stuff. So yeah, we end up going through these initiations, which then we start to see more of a perfected version of these areas of our life, just starting to come into being. Because we're manifesting the like vibration, we've understood the lessons in that initiation. Yeah. E says also the suffering and acts of self-punishments like whipping in religious and spiritual beliefs, even in Zen-like religion and Buddhism, suffering is one of 3 key beliefs. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I would say that like what we do with ourselves is sort of like a self-punishment, but it's not quite like, that's not how I see it personally. But I respect their beliefs for sure. But I do believe that we correct and we use pain. That's part of the hard way, like the spiritual learning. The hard way is we make it painful for ourselves. When it doesn't have to be painful. It's just that basically pain is what triggers us to go, ooh, something's up, right? Something's up with this. And so if we can notice that we don't have to get triggered by pain to get on board with what we're doing, that's sort of when like we stop having the chastisement aspect or the pain aspect. There's also an inner saboteur that wants to just punish us. That's all it wants to do. It just wants to do that all the time. It's like a part of us that hates us, basically. Yeah, seems to be there. And usually, almost all self-punishment, I would say, is not. I don't see how it would be helpful to development personally, but maybe I'm just ignorant. That's probably the case. Curly Vegan says, how fast do you believe manifestation takes in this realm? Does it solely depend on your own frequency? Because one has the ability to experience instant manifestation. Yeah, so it can take place in a moment. Yeah, like I think for example, Jesus making the bread. He didn't spend time to do that. I don't think we have masters that are doing that right now, like in public and being showy about it. But yeah, I believe it's absolutely instantaneous, and I believe that it's absolutely possible. I also believe that it's not something that humanity would be ready probably to have in any like mass scale. Like, I don't feel like the consciousness is ready for that type of stuff to be, and it's not, this isn't really an opinion. It's more like the consciousness doesn't feel ready to engage with a being like that. That being would be perceived as a god, right? So if it was doing it like that at this stage of the consciousness, that would be deleterious to the equalization and the death of the concept of separation of God, which is where we're moving to. We don't want entities here that seem to be super, super, super advanced beings, godlike beings right now, because it'll confuse the shit out of everyone, basically. So we can do it. There are people who do it. They're not people who are going to go like show it or try to spread it around. In fact, if they were to try, it probably wouldn't work out. It's also, if enough people around don't have the faith in the thing, it gets affected by that as well. That's the other thing. So if there's enough people around you that aren't believing in your healing ability or your ability to manifest something, and they're all against you in that way, that affects your ability to bring something about as well. Bring about change or healing in particular. Healing, at least. That's why Jesus would always say, "Rise, your faith has made you well." Not, "I have healed you." Just, your faith made you well. Your belief is what brought you up. And so it works that way in manifestation. So yeah, it could be really, really fast, but because we live and work in this linear experience of like moment to moment to moment on a narrative, there are moving blocks, you could say, that have to fall into place for manifestation as well. So it sort of depends what we're talking about. If we're talking about materializing things out of thin air, it's super possible and totally instantaneous as well. Totally possible to manifest something like that. Certainly I don't know how to do that. But yeah. Theodora says, "It's huge when you start with no beliefs." None. Yeah, exactly. Garganzul says, "It happens before you need it or think of it. Your concept of time is the big question. How much outside of it do you find yourself?" Yeah. Yeah, being outside of time is actually, for me, it's pretty important to my feeling stable, actually. Like, the more I look at clocks and try to worry about time, like, the more confused I get a little bit. The more, like, drained, I feel a little drained, like, trying to do all that. And maybe I'm just a baby. And this is someone who used to run my life by calendars and schedules and to-dos and, like, all of that. I used to do that all the time. And, like, I can't for the life of me. I can't do it. I think it's to the point where, like, if I do get a job, I'm going to have to do something like make juice for people or just do something like that. I'll, like, peel potatoes or something, mop floors, maybe, whatever, dishwash. Might do something like that because I can't care at all to worry about anything else in someone's business. You know, like, I just want to do the thing that helps the thing and just leave me alone. Let me do my thing. That might be might be what I have to do. It'll be fun though. Theodora says, "One super long, terrible nightmare. So happy now." Yeah. He says, "If you really look at the symbol of Christianity, the cross is really the ultimate symbol of pain, suffering, and sacrifice." It really is. Yeah. It really is. I wear it for that reason. I actually, one of the reasons I wear it is to remind myself that my brother already died for this purpose, to show the illusion of this purpose, or to show the illusion of the belief in separation and sorrow and pain and death. That's why I wear the cross, for myself. Because it's an important understanding. Also, the cross does also represent, if I'm not mistaken, the physical world, like the physical reality. It also represents the like varied parts in the body. Yeah, so there's all these symbols. Theodore says, "I feel if you're truly 100% comfortable with your own belief and faith and you're really totally confident and could care less about anyone else's belief." Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. I think that's how I sort of am. And I don't understand why people have emotional connections to some of the beliefs that I don't see the emotion in anymore. Like, I understand that why people do it, why others have it, and I'm sure I do in certain areas. So when I'm in conversations with people, I don't even expect them to be worried really about what I say. You know, I'm not expecting them to care at all really what I say. So when they do, I'm kind of usually shocked. I'm like, "Oh, like, you care what I'm saying? Whoa." That's cool. But also, I seem to have upset you. And so I have trouble socially sometimes in that situation. Not as much as I used to, but I used to have trouble socially with that. Because I'm really comfortable with my beliefs, and I feel like I know who I am and I know what I'm doing, and so I'm not worried about any of that stuff. And I'm not worried about if they believe things I say or not, or if they, whatever. So what could it matter? So when other people do, it's a bit odd for me as well. Yeah, no alcohol. Most people are still in kindergarten in the school of manifestation. Yeah, I agree completely. Curly Vegan says, I can't manifest instantaneously either. I was just curious because you were saying before that we manifest these situations that occur to us. Yes, the cross represents the mind, body, and spirit. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like we can manifest these things really quickly as well for our lessons. So we're not just manifesting. A lot of people consider manifesting to be like, oh, I am going to manifest a job. But actually, manifestation is reality that you participate in. The actual reality you're participating in is the result of your manifestation, right? All of it, every little thing of it. Right now, I happen to be rubbing my feet together. That's a manifestation. As weird as that is. I don't know why I'm doing it or what it is, or why I'm talking about it. More manifestations to be had. Most of it is just completely unconscious. We're just doing whatever, trying to fill some need. We're hungry, we're thirsty, we're whatever. We're just doing those things. But we are also queuing up things to come along in advance. Like we're sort of saying, like we'll miss a lesson and we'll handle it wrong, and the universe will go, okay, tomorrow, sort of thing. Now it's not like some external entity is going, okay, tomorrow. It's us going, we'll do that again tomorrow. And then that same lesson comes tomorrow. And we actually go through these cycles every single day of manifesting these little lessons and then navigating them and then new ones. And it can get quite subtle and nuanced. We can get really into the details of it, of each moment, actually, if we want to get really multidimensional with it. And the microcosm expands out into the macrocosm, and then we start to see cyclings happen over year-long periods and longer periods, 30-year periods with Saturn return, or all these things. And all of that Saturn that seems to be out there is within us. We are all of it. All of it. So it's kind of a lot of stuff to be, right? The mind has a hard time wrapping its head around being everything. It doesn't even know what everything is. So it's like, cognitive dissonance, robot mind, error. And that's okay. But that's why I think people like myself we just keep like spouting it all the time. All right. So that's been about an hour, and I got to get going. I'm going to do some grocery shopping, get my kids, go to Halloween and get some candy, see if I can see any ghosties. I'm excited. I'm going ghost hunting. Not for real. But sometimes I get to see stuff on Halloween. I get to see stuff. So I'm kind of excited. We'll see what happens. Thank you guys so much. Sorry, I missed your. I'm gonna go to your questions here, or your comments here. Maybe a higher form of self-mastery, evolving without any needed catalysts. Reminded me of what God said in the movie Evan Almighty. Let me ask you something. If someone prays for patience, do you think God gives them patience, or does he give them an opportunity to be patient? If he prayed for courage, does God give him courage, or does he give him opportunities to be courageous? That's exactly right. That movie is amazing. I love that movie. It's got so much wisdom in it like that. when we pray for love or for patience, when we pray to be patient, we're sort of asking, we're implying that there's something we're waiting for as well. And if we want courage, then we want to be courageous. So we're actually calling for an experience like that. Yeah, it's very, very wise. That's actually what we're doing, like in the manifestation unconsciously and stuff as well, with everything. We're like always praying basically to God, quietly and loudly in different ways. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. You're all amazing.